James, what do you think about Kyogre in Regulation G? This is a question I have gotten in YouTube comments, Twitter DMs, and Discord chat groups hundreds of times, asking me this one exact question. As someone who has been dubbed one of the best, if not the best Kyogre player in the world, with my years of experiences and accomplishments with the Sea Basin Pokemon, including multiple regionals top cuts, 2 regional championship wins, 2 international championship top cuts, and 2 consecutive top 4s at the World Championship in the most recent World Championships involving restricteds, so many wonder about my thoughts on how Kyogre is in Generation 9. Well, to understand my thoughts, let me talk about what made Kyogre so strong, especially in prior years. During the early generations and even until now, Kyogre has had an incredible base stat distribution. A high base special attack stat of 150 and a monstrous special defense of 140 are fantastic. A solid base 100 HP, and even though its physical defense wasn't the greatest with only 90 for a legendary Pokemon, Intimidate could easily patch this weakness. Base 90 speed wasn't incredible, but allowed Kyogre to be flexible, making it fast enough to work with Choice Scarf outspeeding many Pokemon and Tailwind, while not being too fast so it could still take advantage of Trick Room. Being able to set Rain also powered up its own water moves and helped support its allies through Swift Swim, other abilities, or reducing damage of fire moves, as a pure water type is also a huge plus. Water being one of the best offensive typings with only 3 resistances, no immunities other than specific abilities like Water Absorb, and has a great defensive type with only 2 weaknesses in Grass and Electric type moves. Water Spout is what makes Kyogre really shine though. A base 150 base power spread water type attack that is boosted by Rain alongside an item like Mystic Water or Choice Specs can easily sink your opponent's side very quickly. The only downside is this move gets weaker the less HP Kyogre has remaining, but can be made up with other strong water moves like Origin Pulse or Scald if you have taken too much damage. A great thing about Kyogre is being able to punish one of the most common support Pokemon from switching in, being Incineroar. Incineroar is a Pokemon that likes to switch because of fake out pressure for the following turn, as well as that Intimidate that it does provide. But with strong spread water type moves in the Rain being Water Spout and Origin Pulse, you heavily punish Incineroar, being able to pick up the knockout, or if Incineroar does run a Partial Berry or Focus Sash, still has to take a ton of damage there. So it is very nice at being able to punish that switching and helping support other Pokemon with Incineroar not being able to get an Intimidate or fake out pressure them the following turn. Kyogre was really strong in 2010 with the ability to switch items in between games. You could see Trick Room strategies in one game, and then the following turn you could give the Kyogre a Choice Scarf and it could be really demonic there. In 2016, it was good, but felt weaker due to the less great support options that were better to support Groudon and Xerneas. In 2019, getting access to Incineroar, which paired extremely well to round out Kyogre comps because the Intimidate partner was more versatile than like a Pokemon, let's say like Salamence, alongside an easier way to pivot to win the Weather Wars against Groudon. Kyogre, in my opinion, was really strong in 2010. Good in 2016 and really solid in 2019. However, something from my experiences from playing Kyogre in 2016 and 2019 is that Groudon teams tended to be more optimized in the end towards the end of the format, where I found it harder to position to win games and end up dropping Kyogre entirely. In 2016, even though Kyogre did win Worlds, Primal Groudon was just overall more broken and powerful in my opinion, and didn't require as many conditions as Kyogre did because it didn't have to rely on going for weather moves in Primordial Sea, which you needed to have access to. Otherwise, Groudon would just cancel out any water type moves with its Desolate Land, preventing any damage that could be affected on the board, which I felt like is pretty important to how 2016 and 2019 my decisions were made. Stuff like Trick Room, Airlock, Skill Swap that you pretty much needed with Kyogre paired But with Groudon, you could just click Precipice Blades. Especially if Gravity was up, there is no immunity to Precipice Blades, and you would do a ton of damage there. In 2019, while I felt really good about Kyogre at Worlds, in the past meta, matchups with Lunala, Groudon, and Necrozma with Groudon were difficult for Kyogre, and I ended up picking up Groudon for the last few tournaments of 2019. In Series 12 of Sword and Shield, at the start of the format, while Kyogre had a lot of strong placements, I really did not like how Kyogre teams were designed. Some of the best placing Kyogres were either Assault Vest or Life Orb with Water Spout as the only water type move. I wasn't a huge fan of the Assault Vest Kyogre sets, as it would generally fail to get knockouts with Water Spout, even if you got the full powered ones off, since you would typically be chipped with a lack of speed control. Or Max Geysers. You would also miss the knockouts with really strong single target Max Geysers back then. It's also harder to position with no Protect, so you don't have the option to Protect and switch to get Fake Out and Water Spout pressure the following turn if Kyogre is threatened on the board. The Life Orb set relied heavy on Dynamax Kyogre, and if you need Kyogre to do damage after committing a Dynamax, it needed to be healthy or it won't be doing much damage at all. Combined with new threats such as Regieleki and Assault Vest Rillaboom made life a lot harder for Water Spout Kyogre to sweep teams. Not only were the new Gen 8 Pokemon at the time tricky to deal with, you also had some really big annoyances with Gigantamax Venusaur, which was really bad for Kyogre. Residual damage from many of the max moves greatly impact Water Spout damage. Gastrodon was tricky, being immune to water moves, yawn pressure, and redirecting Max Geysers. The only reason I picked Kyogre back up was after NAIC in 2022, wanting to try Agate's team that had just gotten second place at the event. The overall concept I did notice have flaws, and the game plan was very linear and one-dimensional in a lot of cases. For Worlds, I made a huge mindset shift from being one of the biggest haters of the Life Orb solo Water Spout Kyogre to using it with Indeedee, that I felt was a pair that could do exceptionally well, with Indeedee being able to redirect grass types, unlike Amoonguss in prior years of me using Kyogre, Amoonguss, and Incineroar. It could also stop priority moves from support Thundurus and Grimmsnarl, and could ensure Kyogre got the knockouts with helping hand support. My intuition was correct and could focus on Kyogre being the core component to abuse Dynamax and allow myself to position around it with solid tools. I do think Kyogre was good in 2022, but not the incredible levels of good in 2019. Dynamax allowed Kyogre to survive the crazy power levels of Gen 8 alongside giving it the incredible base 150 power Max Geysers in Rain. Finally, we move on to Scarlet and Violet with Regulation G, which is the first restricted format of Gen 9. After playing multiple hours of Kyogre and testing out a few different teams, where would I rank Kyogre compared to the other available restricteds? Top 5. I think Kyogre is a top 5 restricted option in Regulation G. However, while this ranking that sounds good at a glance does not tell the full story. Let me explain. First, there are many common Pokemon that are problematic for Kyogre to break through. Wellspring Ogerpon is a new Pokemon in Generation 9 that Kyogre has a hard time against. With a high attack stat, powerful grass moves that can one-shot Kyogre while outspeeding it naturally, alongside being immune and even healing from water moves, is extremely problematic. The Rain also increases the damage of Ivy Cudgel that Kyogre's allies have to fear, and having a Terra that increases its special defense means it can be hard to eliminate quickly. While it is not too common now, I do expect to pick up in usage later in the format. Raging Bolt is another new Pokemon from Scarlet and Violet that is really tricky for Kyogre to deal with. Being an electric dragon type with solid bulk and access to an electric priority move poses a real big problem to Kyogre's sweeping potential. Both the popular Calm Mind set and Assault Vest sets are troublesome to deal with. Assault Vest allows Raging Bolt to tank the moves Kyogre does, while firing off either snarls to lower the special attack of Kyogre, which means that your follow-up moves are doing even less damage, or electro webs that do a decent chunk to Kyogre while lowering speed, hurting any speed advantage. Then the following possible thunderclaps can get extremely troublesome. Calm Mind allows Raging Bolt to stack boost to take Kyogre's attack with ease and threaten heavy damage with boosted Dragon Pulses and thunderclaps. Rillaboom was one of the biggest threats to Kyogre in Generation 8 and is still a huge problem to Kyogre in Generation 9. With access to a priority move in Grassy Glide and Wood Hammers that can potentially knock out Kyogre even after being intimidated, a popular starter pick makes it really difficult for Kyogre. With Assault Vest being the most common item, it can tank 2 Water Spouts in rain, while the rare Miracle Seed set can threaten just a Oko with Grassy Glide. Amoonguss can be troublesome, especially with no max lightnings in this generation to stop spores from being fired off into Kyogre. Amoonguss is able to tank rain boosted water moves and even ice beams pretty well, and then heal back by switching with Regenerator. While only a few run a grass move like Grass Knot, you also have to worry about Pollen Puff healing the allies and taking damage while Kyogre is asleep. Koraidon is a new legendary Pokemon that can set up the sun. Unlike against Groudon, where they take a lot of damage from water moves even in the sun, Koraidon is able to take the attacks with its dragon typing if they haven't terrored, making it a lot harder to win the weather war without manual rain dance on an ally. Both Calyrex forms are actually pretty difficult for Kyogre. Calyrex Shadow Rider does a lot of damage with Psyshock and Astral Barrage, while the Focus Sash makes it hard to get rid of. Calyrex Ice Rider usually has multiple partners Kyogre doesn't like dealing with, such as Amoonguss or Rillaboom with Wide Guard Pelipper. Is able to tank a strong Water Spout in rain, set up Trick Room, and even resisted Glacial Lances can chunk Kyogre. Alongside Clear Amulet means it's harder to slow down because you can't intimidate it like in previous years. There are also many Pokemon that aren't popular yet that Kyogre teams don't enjoy facing, but I can see them getting more usage throughout the season, like Regieleki that does a lot of damage to Kyogre, could run Focus Sash, and requires Tailwind with a lot of speed investment to outspeed. The Dragon Restricteds that can tank Water Spout and fire back heavy damage, especially Rayquaza with Airlock that can prevent Kyogre's Water Spout or water type moves in general, just doing less damage overall, and has the access to priority extreme speed. Other Ogerpon forms like Cornerstone with Sturdy that can tank one water move, and Teal Mask can even be tricky. Those are some of the Pokemon that can be difficult for Kyogre to do well, but there are also other threats to be looked at. The rise of strong priority moves. Gen 9 with Terastallization and Ruin abilities has created a new wave of priority moves that are difficult to deal with. Paranormal Extreme Speed from Dragonite, Entei, and now you have to deal with Rayquaza as well. Sucker Punch with King Gambit and Chien-Pao, Thunderclap from Raging Bolt, and even multiple Grassy Glide users with Rillaboom paired next to Ogerpon have made it a lot harder to get full power Water Spouts off. Gen 9's Terastallization mechanic can have mixed results for Kyogre. While Terra Water can allow Kyogre to turn 3-shot knockouts into 2-shots and 2-hit into 1-hit KOs, it is hard to get into a position to fire off full power Water Spouts consistently. Terra Grass can help with Grassy Glide, Thunderclap, and Spore, while Terra Ghost can be a great way to block Fake Outs and extreme speeds. However, it also allows for defensive Terastallizations from opponents, as many Grass Terras are common thanks to Amoonguss, such as Calyrex Ice Rider. Even Terra Water has started picking up more popularity to resist Glacial Lands from Calyrex Ice Rider, making opponents have more potential water resist for Kyogre. One of Kyogre's strengths in the past was its flexibility to be great in Tailwind or Trick Room with its base 90 speed stat, which has become less of an advantage and more of a hindrance now. Over the years, the stat power creep has existed, where now having a base 90 stat can be awkward for Kyogre. For example, if you want to outspeed Calyrex Shadow Rider with a Choice Scarf, after a Calyrex is hit by Electro Web or Icy Wind and has -1 speed, you have to run a timid Kyogre, which means you lose the chance to gain a lot of stat points with a special attack stat of 150 and instead have to focus on getting the 10% boost in speed just to outspeed the most common restricted so far. These calcs can really change damage rolls onto many common Pokemon, like follow-ups onto resistances, meaning you will miss knocking out resistances with 2 full power water spouts in rain, even if you have gotten some prior chip damage. You would also have to invest a lot to outspeed Urshifus. On the slow side, Kyogre can work decently well in Trick Room, but Calyrex Ice will put on a lot of pressure under Trick Room, while some Calyrex Ice teams run some decently fast mons that can pressure a slow Kyogre. Priority Tailwind is more common on other teams as well. In 2019, Tailwind with priority was usually paired with Groudon and Kyogre, but with the huge change to Tailwind with dynamic speed in Generation 8, it is now frequently used as Tornadus is common on many teams, allowing partners that are naturally faster than Kyogre to keep the speed advantage and do a lot of damage to Kyogre, preventing full power water spouts. Manual Weather is a more common option also thanks to Tornadus having access to all weather changing moves that can affect Kyogre's sweeping potential. An increase of wide guard users, especially Mienshao and Pelipper, have become common to block spread moves like Water Spout and Origin Pulse. It also doesn't help that Kyogre lost access to Scald in this generation, so if you want to run a single target water move, you have to choose between Water Pulse, Chilling Water, and the infamous Hydro Pump. Hydro Pump and Origin Pulse are strong moves, but removing the consistent option for Kyogre hurts it in terms of flexibility. Another thing to note is there is going to be a lack of weather wars compared to the previous years where it's not as important to win the weather, as Groudon, and Torkoal aren't the most common Pokemon in the format, at least at the beginning that I've noticed so far. And one thing is that the Pokemon that took advantage of Kyogre's rain, mainly the Swift Swim users, they aren't exactly that great in this generation, and they tend to have been power crept basically, like Ludicolo and Kingdra. The loss of max airstream and other ways of speed control to take advantage of Kyogre, which allowed it to survive Generation 8, where you could go for max airstreams and then Kyogre would have the speed advantage even against the fast stuff after 2 airstreams, would be pretty significant, but that is no longer an option in this generation. To wrap up, Kyogre has a few double-edged swords. First one is Water Spout that we've talked about. It is a great benefit when you do have that full power Water Spout, but it is harder to get full power Water Spouts off consistently in this generation with the amount of strong priority and spread moves. The second one being speed. It used to be a great factor, being able to be flexible in both Trick Room and in Tailwind or any other forms of speed control, but now it's awkward due to not being particularly strong in either direction. In timid Kyogre damage output, you miss out on a lot of knockouts compared to the modest ones previously, and you can't run Life Orb as well as you could. The loss of Dynamax means it lost a consistent way to fire off big hits while having the bulk to tank attacks. It's still good, and again, I listed as a top 5 restricted, but has more weaknesses and harder to position than some of the other restricteds, like the Calyrexes and Koraidon. Being able to boost Paradox Pokemon gives it better utility. It has some great firepower if positioned properly, and good partners like Tornadus that can provide Tailwind alongside strong accurate flying moves in rain, or Caladon can go for Electro Shots in rain to stack boosts. Serena, Indeedee, and Farigiraf can help block priority, while Helping Hand can help the damage output. Landers and Carnage can help against Raging Bolt with 100% accurate Sandsear Storms that I appreciate. And Pokemon like Rillaboom and Amoonguss can take advantage of fire moves, having their power reduced while supporting the Kyogre. Kyogre may have a bit of a hard time in Regulation G, but will get better in a 2 restricted format where weather battles are more common and relevant, alongside supporting some solid restricteds like the Calyrexes and Zacian. I wouldn't be surprised to see Kyogre do well in Regulation G, but if you have tried Kyogre or if you have some other thoughts, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Let me know what you think about this kind of style of content. It's a bit different what I'm normally used to with script writing, but something I've really enjoyed was the script writing process. But as you probably noticed, editing is not exactly my strong suit. It's something I'm learning, but it's definitely going to take time. I would love to actually get an editor for this channel if you do enjoy this kind of style of videos. So if you would like to see more of those and want to support me in that way, feel free to check out my brand new Ko-Fi, which is going to be linked in the description down below. I'm going to be providing a bit more bonus content there that I wouldn't usually put on the main channel. So if you would like to check out some ladder showdown content of me doing open team sheet best of threes on the showdown ladder to give my thought processes there, and a few other stuff. Otherwise, subscribe to the channel for more VGC content as always.